Good morning, Kate.
Good morning, Janet, and good morning, anybody who is listening live or listening on the replay. We know that we've got quite a few new members joining us for the new year, new beginning, and we're really delighted and honoured to have you with us.
We will sort of create a little separate post welcoming everybody, but we've been getting this live happening. So, but yes, a huge warm welcome. Should we let's just take a few minutes, Kate, coming in the new year.
Yeah.
Maybe just take a few moments. Actually, something has just occurred to me, and I know you'll trust. Could we just welcome everyone's little girl, our internal little girl, each and every person listening? We welcome you, and we welcome your inner little girl. All of you is welcome in this space. All parts of you are welcome in this space. And then we give a huge welcome as well, even though they won't be listening as such, but to our actual children. What are you giggling?
I was just connecting with all of those children, and there were so many of them, and they were bright and full of energy. And because amongst us, there are many children. Some walk on the earth, some not here anymore, but we are surrounded by. And I really felt beaming at us and finding delight in the fact that we were connecting with them and welcoming. Yeah.
And what about little Kate?
Yeah. She's always very happy to be seen and to be welcomed and to be validated and acknowledged and all the things our inner children long. And if I may add, Janet, I really honor all of the women who are swirling around the field of the Cherished Mother, because I know how deeply all of us long for the very best for our children and long to be the very mothers, caretakers, guides, mentors for our children. And that is why we do this. But I know that's also so many of you listen, choose to give intentional time, part of your. So really honouring that for all of us.
Can I just to the business? This is a word. We'll get going and not that. But I just want to say is that this work is really, like when we talked about the inner child and our actual child, that just might feel like it's for a mum who has young children, for example. And that is, of course, true. But I think it's really important to say that this is vital at whatever age your child. I think that's really important. And it could, in fact, be your granddad. So I just wanted to really presence that. I think it's really important to say it doesn't matter how old your children are. This is really important.
And that actually what we're going to be talking about today, which is relationship with our inner, that supports our relationship with our actual children, but that relationship with our inner child also supports all aspects of our lives, including our relationships with our partners, our friends, it just so happens that, and within the Cherished Mother, we were talking about our actual children.
So where should we begin?
This particular conversation sits within a sort of series of conversations and workshops that you and I have felt called to. All of them sort of sit with this exploration that we are in of our inner landscape and understanding ourselves on a deeper level than perhaps. And it also sits within our perspective or our point of view, whatever struggles we are facing in life, particularly in our that the most powerful, the most impactful place turn our gaze or set the intention of our energy is actually nurturing, understanding ourselves and what's going on for us first. And whereas the temptation for many of us, particularly when we're struggling or in pain or just overwhelmed or it's all feeling, is to make that very human judgment, which is if only these things were different, if only I had an easier child, if only I had a different child or an old, I could do this. I could do this. The if only is very tempting when we're in those kinds of pain.
yeah, and take a moment actually, and really, each of us will have our own version. I think that's what I just wanted to take a moment to pause. What is your, because it will look different than mine and Kate's. It will potentially look different. They'll have and it might not be. Just really welcome in and take a moment to, I suppose it can, what can it feel like if we were to describe the feeling of it, Kate, potentially just pull a little bit more of a sense of it, because I just think it's so, I'm actually feeling a real wave of emotion, which suggests to me that it's not my emotion, it's just this more general, and my sense is that it's a feeling of doing, of taking action, of needing to control, and that actually behind it, and that's, I think, that emotion that I'm feeling for everyone is behind it, is there are emotions going on and we don't feel them because we need to do. So in your case, I know you won't mind me saying it, was if only I had different, then I'd be really good. For me, it was only I could take control. If I could just get this strategy that I've read about, for example, all of these strategies, if I could just do that.
For me, because obviously I did have to parent the children that I was given, bottom line, oscillate being, oh, this is just too hard, I can't do it. Feelings. I just got to find the way to help this child who seemingly, is. And that puts so much pressure and thinking into the system. So it was kind of overly trying to think my way out. So neither of those felt good. One was incredibly exhausting, and the other felt just, a kind of collapse inside, or just, I just can't do it. But of course, as mothers, we have to do it.
Yeah. Again, by talking about our patterns, they tend to be quite, and working with the mums that we do, we see them time and time again, and we want to acknowledge them. And I want to say now, please, we are never, ever, ever saying that wrong. And I think that will lead us next into the why of this. But I just wanted to pause and just to acknowledge that. And I think we can then create some more invitations on that to allow.
Big.
And I don't mean big. It's asking that I need another book. I need to, if only, for me, what strategies can I put in place when my children do this? It's like, no, my love.
And I feel a lot of emotion listening to you. And again, it's not just for me, it's for all of us. Actually, this becomes real with what we're feeling, really honest with ourselves about maybe the extreme we're feeling. It's quite like, I would never have admitted the depths or the strength of some of the feeling that I was going through to other people, partly because it was like I felt so stuck. It didn't feel like it would do any good, or it would make it worse somehow to acknowledge it, because I knew I did have. So what you're inviting us into here, asking people to really feel into what is there if only, or what are the extremes of emotions they sometimes feel. I just acknowledge that is a big thing to do. So we are here with you as you do that. That is huge. And that's where I'm feeling the emotion for everybody.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. Yeah.
Mothering, parenting, the biggest missions we can undertake in life. So no wonder it kind of calls things. And perhaps that leads it to children. Bless them. I was really sensing as I said that about this big mission that we take to become mothers. It is a big mission. We are taking on a huge responsibility to bring up our actual children and to be. And so many of them, when we actually haven't necessarily sort of strengthening or sorting out or properly establishing the relationship with our own, and often the relationship isn't there or isn't fully strengthened, it can have a huge impact on the way that we're showing up in our actual parenting. And that's the link we want.
Huge, because it's again that moment of pause. What? But I'm an adult, but I'm a mum, I'm grown up,
Yes.
man, I'm kind of, I've got a car, I do all of these things, but it's felt
Yes.
in this outward screaming, shouting, overwhelm, but that relationship between us and our child, it's actually going on, it's just hidden, it's unconscious. It out.
And it's almost felt, just leading on saying, it did tickle me what you were saying there, that it was almost like I had to play a bit of catch up with these ideas, because you're right, I was there, I was being a parent, all those grown up things, and it's quite tender piece of work that actually I had never done, in spite of me being able to show up, as you say, in the world. And it's a choice, isn't it? We don't have to do it. As you say, we can adult all we like without doing this work.
Yeah.
But it has had a profound impact on both you and I know them other mums, to parent in ways. Yeah.
And my saying that, if we're willing, of course, as you say, it's a choice. You know, you and I, honest, that it's actually in some ways it's a harder choice. Carry on what you're doing, and then it really is interesting is that the drive to carry on in our old patterns is actually coming from this little by carrying on in so much, trying to be different, trying to, all of that actually really don't work. So for me, it's like when we can get these real foundations, and like you think of a house, we really build stronger foundations, the change, the profound impact it has on the relationship, as your children get older, it becomes even more apparent. I just want to the demands of looking after toddlers and babies and that the sort of as you get this, your children grow up as well, because you've grown up, something happens there as well. But get this building blocks in place. For me it was, and you're on the right track. I'm not quite being the mum I want to step. It's not just our fantasy.
It's interesting what you just said about abandonment of the child. I was feeling called actually to sort of look back in our lives at where oftentimes that little girl's been abandoned or not properly seen, heard, honoured, very, very young age of us. And certainly for me, Janet, that I kind of running in my life, which then became a parent.
Which they all think. But I'd say no, 9% of mums would.
And I guess that's the wonderful and yet also maddening thing about becoming a mother, is that it's almost like maybe we were able to sort of just about get by with those patterns or cope with the fact that they were there before children, but like when you're and also, whereas I used to maybe just rage at myself or with myself, when I became a mum, I found I was starting to my children, and it was really my of that behavior that had me start to be like, okay, what is really going on here? It is, much as I thought if I didn't, I would be different. I don't know if that's the truth, because my life. I don't know. We can change where we live. We could choose to change our partner. We can change so many things in life, but actually we still have to, we have with ourselves and the parts of us that may have been abandoned that are in ways.
So two things, Kate, so much. And you and I need to make a commitment to ourselves to go back and knowledge. We've covered a lot. But there are two things that I wanted to just sort of talk about firstly is what I mean by the inner child, an archetype, potentially. And also and someone might listen and go, well, I had loving parents. What are you talking about? Did you, Janet, were you did you, like you, and like, there's those two themes. Two first, Kate.
A child would make sense. I think your question was, what do we mean by the inner child?
Yeah, because we talked about it. So just to sort of focus in there, and particularly in the theme of a lot of our work, which is archetypal. We've talked about the archetypal queen, the sovereign, sort of have an archetype of a magician that we will also be weaving in at some point in these series of conversations. But
how do you expect, or how?
I think firstly is that it could be for me is to see this as an energy, something that's there as a pattern in all of us, rather than there's some you, Janet. It's there. So, child, bring up, and we grow up and we do, as we say, we do all the adult things, and that is there within our bodies. And because seen, we just don't see how much it impacts. What about you? Because I just think the more we...
And if I'm honest, when I was first introduced to this idea, I was a bit of it. Oh, come on. Like, how woo-woo. Do I really need this in my life? Like, what? But interestingly, when I did take up an invitation to that energy that you're talking about, what I discovered there, experience so like, I was like, oh, this is like the essence of me. It's like all the bits that I've sort of not allowed to be here, the playful part, the joy, the creative part. I found all these aspects of myself that in the sort of seriousness of growing up in the culture system we grew up in, and the adulting that I'd been doing, I'd sort of abandoned or forgotten about these parts. I just sort of thought they weren't actual, to be honest, or necessary. But when I actually felt into that, I could feel me. It's like, and what I have since discovered, Janet, and this is the wonderful thing about our inner child, or that energy you're talking about, is for me, and I'll only speak for me right now, but she has become like my greatest guides. I'd almost say my greatest because actually give her what she needs. I feel most ground live, all of those wonderful things that then show up in life. And so I actually had to eat my hat, or whatever the phrase is, that actually giving her attention has been one of the most rich of time, which is kind of what I thought at the beginning, if I'm honest.
Yes, okay, like more practically, if anyone's listening and they're thinking, well, if I honor my inner child, you saying I'm going to
as I said that, I thought, yeah, that could be me.
Kate doesn't quite mean it in a literal sense, packing up her home and moving, or like actually it's more at the essence. Yeah. And yeah. So there's that, and we can go about that in more detail.
But maybe I'll just give a practical example. One of the things that I did when I actually connected with that part of myself really doesn't like being rushed. When she feels really anxious. The way I was living life and parenting was often in a rush of pressure to be moving at a certain speed. And when I started to realize that actually that was causing a certain part of me to feel really anxious, I could see, well, that's where my overwhelm's coming from. And to deal with my feelings of overwhelm, it required me to actually set up life in such a way that I was on the back foot, that I wasn't always rushing. That didn't mean that I had to necessarily do less, but I had to kind of consciously go about life in a way that I hadn't been.
And I love the fact that you've mentioned that anxiousness. Would you like, and again, overwhelm, those words, those experiences you and I have that are really, really, really uncomfortable, aren't they? I mean, that's just, being anxious, overwhelmed, ever that it's
yeah.
So I think that's a really practical way of saying, for me, it was and anxiety both, but it's like, so this is incredibly practical. With
what was the second question you had? I can't
remember. It was so I think I'm just going to say this, and I don't think we need to go into it too much, because next bit is just to say this is never it as well. Obviously, it's more pronounced. Say that. Take a moment. We mentioned our inner child or things like this. It's our little girls will take on that feeling of abandonment can be very, very small things in our upbringing. Say that. This isn't, it could also be bigger things as well, abandonment, your dad, a father leaving, or things like that. I just want to presence that can be very, very subtle. Resonate, but yet you're with anxiety and overwhelm and stress, there will be something. Does that make sense, Kate?
It does. And maybe because abandonment is such a big word, there are other words, like about the word ignored. Like oftentimes, I think growing up, my little girl got ignored because we were told, no, we haven't got time for that. Even my parents were also in their own, maybe there wasn't time to talk about that moment. And sometimes it would, little girl was just being ignored.
Yeah.
And I got to get to, what's the word? We get into habits of, it's just too inconvenient to listen to her, so let's just get on with life. And so it can be ignoring her as much as abandoning, which sounds very
so maybe we can consciously a little list of other things based on and for me, I mean, just as a simple example, being told put a happy face on Dana,
that kind of thing.
You're like, well, that's not abandonment, but in now thing, acknowledging the debt again, that all is welcome, so welcome. Questions, result there. And for me, it's like, but if I look there at my inner child, and I could see her needs were met, and be, oh my God, what am I doing to my actual children? It made, and I just want to presence. As, did you ever think that? Or did that?
No.
All right.
But I know lots of women who do.
Yes, just me.
Yeah.
It never is it? Like if you
No.
But I just want to say that is that it's like, well, yes, child has got, is you say me be anxious, but my child has got anxiety, my child has got these things, and I need to child out, my actual child. So, because I can't look at this. And I just want to, and but if I'm not parenting well, messing up my child. So you're even more on that. And offer as a mum of three, they are grown up. I struggle still. Of 3 boys who are what now, 22. It just isn't the case. Every bit of me strengthening my own relationship internally, me recovering myself when I've let go with them, and for them to have a much happier, more settled, more grounded.
Yeah.
But I of the patterns of it in terms of the archetypes and the weaving of energies within ourselves. Good to you.
To me, two things. One is, and it back sort of, it just feeds off what you're saying, Janet, that this isn't an either or situation, and they're practical things we can, or steps take in physical life to support our children. For example, at one point, one of those practical things was actually taking my son for an assessment, a diagnosis, which very practically, same time, this strengthening our, as you say, our inner relationship with ourselves, or understanding our in such a way that we feel more rooted and more stable in ourselves, helps either weather, as in weather the storm, or the weather things, whatever's going to come our way with our children, know what's around the next corner or what the next challenge might be. We can be in a good phase and think, oh, we're fine, and then next month. And so this work can be side, as I say, taking quite practical steps. Yeah. And then the second thing was that big, what we're talking about is big. This can't be dusted in like this. And different courses and programs that we offer in the Cherished Mother help to unpack these pieces bit by bit by bit, because it's a lifelong journey, this exploration of our inner landscape. So I guess I say that because I didn't pressure, or like they haven't got it just this time we've had together, but we were just really wanting today to begin this conversation. Invite you.
Yeah. And again, just softening that energy, that willingness, I suppose, for a curiosity and an openness to, oh, maybe could really presently. It's different to the so what do I do? And I want to acknowledge both like, yeah, but okay, but so what do I just want to keep present. Very human. You know, as you said, with a child that is struggling at school, for example, in the way it's like, so what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And that is, as you said, true that there are steps to take, but have that openness to, oh, could this support, could this exploration support, guide me in ways that it's kind of just that energy.
Yeah.
Just a little tickle.
Yeah.
Like I just want to like really in and just that's all. That's enough. A little spark. Sense of that energy. Follow those. Yeah. Mentioning the Queen. How do I? Of course, there's be true. We can do two things at once, and I think you taking your example actually of that diagnosis going is there's holding, guiding, supporting little Kate. Your relationship to her is magical. Your inner queen holding little Kate as well. Now, oftentimes with that queen role, well, a guide, a supporter, but about things working with our inner child and this to go out there in the world, be with, for example, this and being with this example. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And it was coming up as you were speaking. You said that oftentimes, whilst we have somebody else, a guide or a mentor, to help grow that queen energy, but ultimately, the ideal, as I see it, is that we have a strong queen who understands the needs of the inner child and tend to those, provide for those, even make agreements and set boundaries for that child, doesn't get overwhelmed.
Yeah.
All of that contributes to this sense of groundedness and connectedness and rootedness within ourselves that helps us then take the action we need in the world in a needy, panicky, overwhelmed way. I wanted to add, as you were saying that, Janet, did you have anything to say to that?
No, I think because we could end up which what I just wanted to say is you mentioned grounded, like if we take the word grounded or settled, I feel like a word that is enough to feel more ease, for example, could be an example. Than the less, not anxious and all of those, but I acknowledge those to it. What do you like? It's like, oh, something like grounded that we hear all the time. Or if we did a Instagram, not Instagram, like a scroll, you would find someone talk how to be more grounded. And it's a beautiful concept. It's more than a concept. It is what we need, right? 100%, and there'll be other versions. But what I loved, and I want to the way to be more grounded comes from having strong roots, and one of those are in a child. And then a relationship, and I think courage, capacity. And I would go to, it's really hard to change without those. I feel the good thing to then maybe create some questions and share those in the group rather than making an invitation, sort of
yeah. My mind's jumping ahead to an invitation around our you and my little children, inner children, and other people's too. And it's but I'll leave that. Right.
And place of curiosity. Maybe it's that, well, it's okay for you to, I can't do that, I won't change, you don't know me, I've had this experience. Because we said, whatever arises, I can, is to share that with us. All of your resistance, all of your thoughts, all of your, yes, but I've tried, I've done this, we're here. I have enough love holding biggest heart. Complete, Kate?
Complete. Thank you.
Oh. Trust, and this was something for me. If something's occurring and you're feeling, and share that. You earlier right at the beginning of the call, you talked about what if you did.
And that in itself is a to honor our little girl. There's a message to her that sort of help is on the way. That that you're taking the first step on this road to really seeing and understanding her and what she needs in order for you to be able to be more stable or more joyful or more filled up.